Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. This is Property Management 101, and for today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you 5 tips that you need to keep in mind when you're traveling in the property management industry. Whether you're a regional manager and you're traveling to one of your assets, or you're a property manager and maybe you've been asked to help out in another community, you always want to keep in mind these 5 tips every single time you travel. The first tip and practice that I would always put into place when you're traveling to another asset, or maybe it's one of your assets you're responsible for as a regional, is you really want to determine your agenda when you go to that asset. What is your reason that you're going to the asset in the first place? What is your goal or strategy for that particular trip? Are you going because maybe there's something you need to deal with a new staff member, like training or onboarding? Or is there a situation, maybe a metric at that property that's struggling that you need to go there to help assist on? Maybe you're going to fill in. Maybe you're going just to check in. Maybe you're going because there's an owner visit or a bank visit coming up. Whatever the reason is, you want to make sure you set and align your agenda why you're going to that particular asset in the first place. Knowing your agenda for that's going to be really important. You relay that information to the on-site team so they have an idea of what to expect, what to prepare, and that way they're also that much more ready for anything that you may be dealing with when it comes to a visit, having units ready or notifying those residents, or anything else that may be included of why you're going to the asset in the first place. Also keep in mind, if you plan on meeting with the entire staff during your visit, you want to let them know of a few times that work for you while you're at that particular asset visiting. This will be important so they can block off their day. They don't schedule any tours. They make sure everyone can attend and give everyone the heads up at that particular asset to ensure that they can attend. Knowing what I just addressed will give you a good starting point of determining your agenda for that visit. Welcome back to Property Management 101. For those of you that are new here, please allow me to introduce you to our community. This channel is dedicated to discussing best practices, offering valuable tips, and sharing tricks that are tailored specifically to the property management industry. You may have noticed there is an abundance of podcasts, channels, and websites out there providing information that's related to the property management industry. However, much of this content is focused on catering to investors and to property owners really maximizing their investments. Here is where we stand out. Our channel is created with you, the individuals in the trenches, in mind. We are here to support those that are actively involved in managing properties, ensuring that not only your efforts are worthwhile, but also highly effective. So whether you're a seasoned professional or you're new to the property management industry, you've come to the right place. Join us as we dive into proven practices for the property management industry, and we'll be discussing many different types of demographic and asset types in the property management industry. Thank you for being a part of our community, and we look forward to engaging with you on this exciting journey in the property management space. The second good practice that you want to keep in mind when you're traveling to an asset is you want to make sure you take care of yourself. If you travel for work and spend that entire time traveling focused on work, you're likely to have the burnout effect if you do this often. You want to make sure during your travel you take care of yourself. This could include things like going to a gym, taking time to contact family, friends. This also could be things like getting enough sleep, making sure you're eating enough. So you really want to make sure when you're traveling, you are taking care of yourself. This is one of the most common reasons why I see when there's an individual that travels a lot for work and that they have that burnout effect in the property management industry. It's because during their times that they're traveling, they're not taking care of themselves. So you want to make sure you allot some time to work out, contact family, to make sure you get enough sleep, make sure you eat. This is going to be really important to really ensure that you don't burn out from traveling too much when you're visiting some sites. If you're enjoying this video and you're learning something new, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for future videos. The third best practice that you want to keep in mind when you're traveling to an asset is you want to check in with your teams at least once a day. Now, if you're a regional manager, when you check in with your teams, it may be just the other assets you're responsible for. You may just want to check in, maybe give a quick email or a quick phone call to see how things are going and see if there's anything you can help them with. If you're a property manager or site level employee and you only work at one particular asset, checking in with your team once a day to see if there's anything you can help them with, anything pending, any questions come up, anything that's urgent that cannot wait for you to come back. Now, I give this tip with a little bit of hesitation. because I often see that employees will do this too much and spend too much of the day that cuts into the reason why they're visiting that property in the first place, dealing with things back at another asset. So you want to make sure when you check in with your team, this is limited. I would only recommend maybe once or twice a day. If anything can wait, allow it to wait to when you get back. If anything's an emergency that cannot wait, obviously deal with it. But if it is a situation that your entire day is really getting disrupted of why you're at the asset in the first place with aspects at another property, then I would question, did you really prepare your team well? And that's something to keep in mind, that if you're getting pulled away from that asset that you're visiting too much due to a situation from another asset, you want to start questioning and maybe preparing your team differently when you go and travel to an asset. And that leads me to my fourth practice to keep in mind when you're traveling. Make sure you prepare your team. This is really important when you leave and you travel, so you can have 100% focus on that particular asset you're visiting and you're not pulled away too much dealing with things regarding another asset. You want to make sure that anything that come up during the day that you typically handle, you have someone covering that for you, or maybe you have an auto reply letting that person know that has emailed you to expect delays. But you also want to make sure if there are situations that could come up, like maybe a situation dealing with a vendor or a prospect or a resident, that you have someone assigned that can deal with that while you're out visiting that particular property. In addition to having an auto reply if anyone emails you of that you're traveling, or maybe someone that's covering for you while you're traveling in that auto reply, I would also recommend any upcoming travel that you include in your signature, letting anyone know that you're emailing shortly before you travel that you will be out and traveling certain days and to expect delays. This can be really good to allow that individual to know that you'll be out certain days and they can expect delays. Also keep in mind any meetings that you may have scheduled or calls during the time that you're traveling. I would highly recommend canceling or rescheduling any calls that you have during a time that you're visiting a property. If a meeting is too important that you can't cancel or reschedule, really try to limit it during your travel so it's not a situation you're being pulled too much from that property's focus of why you're visiting in the first place for that particular call, maybe regarding another asset or situation. So you really want to limit those. Now, if it's a situation where you have multiple calls or meetings that you cannot reschedule for one reason or another due to the importance of them, then I would question in the first place, why are you going to visit that property if you have all these important meetings that you need to focus on you cannot reschedule in the first place? Maybe visit that asset at a different time where you don't have those urgent meetings that you have to attend and cannot reschedule. And the last practice to keep in mind when you're visiting an asset is you want to focus on that asset. Oftentimes when you go to visit an asset, that site team is going to do some prep work for your visit. It may be cleaning the property, it may be altering their schedules. So you want to make sure when you're there that you are giving that asset the full attention it deserves. What I've been frustrated with in my career is when I've been working at the site level and I saw a regional manager come to town and we had a lot of questions of prep work of things we did for their visit, and the entire time or most of the time they spent that time on the phone regarding another property. This was frustrating for me and the others on our team because number one, we didn't get the time we thought with that particular regional. Number two, we knew that that expense of that travel was coming out of our budget. So you want to be considerate of everyone's efforts for any visit that you're going to a property and make sure you're focusing on that asset. And this tends to be one of the most common mistakes I see regional managers make when they visit an asset is they're spending too much time at that asset regarding a different asset. And for a video recap today, please keep in mind these 5 tips when you're traveling in the property management industry. Number 1, you really want to determine your agenda before you go to visit that asset. What is your goal for that visit? Why are you going in the first place? Is there any prep work that the team needs to be aware of and complete before your visit? Is there a situation where you're training a new employee or employees? If so, you want to make sure they block off time as well as you block off time during that visit for those times. So please keep this in mind when you're traveling to an asset to always have a goal and always communicate that to the team. Number 2, you really want to make sure to take care of yourself. This is something I often see from people that travel a lot in the property management industry do not do. During the time they travel, they may work a lot, they may get a lot accomplished, but then they may burn out from that travel, so they cannot do it long term, or they're not as efficient as they could be. So you want to make sure you're getting enough sleep, you're eating enough, you're exercising, you're communicating with your friends and family and checking in, and also relaxing things, whether it be if you're a reader or something else. You want to make sure you're doing these things even when you're traveling. Number 3, you want to check in with your team. Now, again, you do not want to check in with them all the time. it's taking you away from that asset and why you're traveling in the first place. So you want to make sure you're checking in, but you want to make sure there's a balance there. You're not checking in too often. Number 4, you want to prepare your team. If you feel like you need to check in more and things are getting missed, or you have to address a lot of things while you're visiting, then you probably failed to prepare your team effectively. So you want to make sure you have things set up where you're communicating to the individuals you're working with. You want to make sure you have your email set up with things we talked about with your signature, as well as an auto reply. You want to make sure anything that's pending, you have someone you can hand it off to address while you're out. You also want to make sure you cancel or reschedule any meetings that you have during this time. And again, if you cannot reschedule those meetings because of the importance of them, maybe you want to question if this is a good time to travel in the first place. And the last thing to keep in mind, and probably the most important thing to keep in mind when it comes to traveling in the property management industry, is you want to focus on that asset while you're traveling to it. You want to make sure your entire focus, or most of your focus while you're there, is addressing that particular property. You don't want a situation where you're constantly pulled away for other situations at other properties. That visit is going to be an expense of that property's budget, and it's not fair to that property or those investors if you're constantly dealing with things at another property. You want to make sure that most, if not all, of your focus and time and energy is on that particular asset. And you want to make sure that that visit is a visit where you're constantly focused on that team out of consideration for what that team may have done that leading up to your visit. They may have altered their schedule, or they may did a lot of prep work or extra effort for your visits. You want to make sure you give them the consideration that they deserve. If you enjoyed this video and you learned something new, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for future videos. Before putting any of these practices into place, please watch our updated disclosure video, as well as our updated why we do this video, which is the channel's why. And I'll be providing a link to both of those in the video description. And to stay on top of industry news, polls, and video releases, please feel free to connect with our LinkedIn and our Instagram page. If you have any questions about this video or any of our videos, feel free to leave a comment. I'll be happy to address it for you. Happy leasing!